At exactly 6:42 a.m., they pulled her out, wedged awkwardly between two hay bundles and a collapsed pile of expired protein shake boxes. Her only defense was a half-screamed claim about illegal emus being trafficked through my barn. One of the officers gave her a long blink and calmly replied, "Ma'am, these are patio umbrellas, not poultry." She made a dramatic lunge toward a box labeled, "Porcelain Toad Collection, Fragile," before being expertly zip-tied. I stood on my porch, cradling my mug of dark roast, and sighed, well, this is certainly one way to introduce the world to my ceramic interests. I'm Harold Winslow. I moved into the Maple Hollow Meadows neighborhood 5 years ago, drawn in by its serene trails and charming isolation. I bought a modest home nestled on 3 acres with a weathered old blue barn that quickly became my safe haven for quirky hobbies. Inside, I stored my collection of vintage metal signs, a few relics from old amusement parks, and, admittedly, a disturbingly lifelike Elvis impersonator mannequin. Then came Deborah Klein, the WA secretary turned self-declared compliance crusader. With a Bluetooth headset permanently affixed to her ear and a beagle named Admiral tagging along, Deborah took it upon herself to root out what she termed architectural deviations. The day she saw my barn, she froze mid-jog, snapped a photo, and declared it unverified infrastructure. That moment birthed what she dubbed the Barn Transparency Project, pursued with the zeal of someone who thought local zoning bylaws were federal security codes. First, she tried to classify my barn as an unregistered outdoor monument. Then she delivered 9 structure identity forms, all formatted in Comic Sans, asking absurd questions like, how many emotional support barrels reside inside? And, does this structure host clandestine chili cook-offs? I declined to respond. It was my property, my barn, and entirely beyond her jurisdiction. That, naturally, led her to escalate. She deployed a quadcopter drone to patrol my property and began emailing blurry aerial shots captioned, Exhibit C, Hey Too Orderly. She even warned neighbors that I was harboring rogue goats, despite not owning a single animal, let alone a farm license. The situation took a turn one Thursday evening. I pulled into my driveway to see her balanced on a folding ladder, peering into my loft window with binoculars. When she saw me, she pressed her face against the glass and muttered something about irregular stacking patterns. I asked her what that even meant. She tapped the side of her head and climbed down without a word. That's when I realized she wasn't just meddling anymore, she was plotting. Over the next week, silence. No emails, no photos, no drone buzzing like a digital hornet. I knew better than to relax. Deborah only went quiet when she was up to something. So I installed a new security camera setup inside the barn. The cameras were small, discreet, motion-triggered, and synced to my phone. I hoped I'd never need them, but had a sinking feeling I would. That following Tuesday at 5:17 a.m., my phone buzzed violently with motion alerts, followed seconds later by the unmistakable wail of sirens. I stumbled out of bed, threw on sweatpants, and looked out to see 2 cruisers parked in front of my home, red and blue lights casting disco flashes across my living room. Officer Delgado approached with practiced calm and said, "We received a report of unusual animal activity and potential weapon storage on the premises." He glanced at my flannel pajamas and raised an eyebrow. Suppressing a laugh, I said, "You're welcome to check. No cows, no guns, just an unsettling number of nutcrackers." I led them to the barn and flicked on the lights. As expected, they found a stash of bubble-wrapped vintage clocks, a half-assembled unicycle, and my beloved lineup of presidential garden statues. The officers exchanged amused glances. Then we heard it, a soft, unmistakable sneeze. Delgado signaled for silence. We crept toward the sound, and there, crouched behind stacked faux Christmas trees, was none other than Deborah Klein. She wore full camouflage, head to toe in surplus store fatigues, and clutched a clipboard labeled, Neighborhood Justice. Her eyes went wide when she realized she'd been found. Through a flurry of frantic words, she claimed she was on a private reconnaissance mission to expose illegal behavior under Section X2 of the HOA Handbook, a section no one had ever heard of. What she didn't know was that my cameras had captured her entering, lockpicking with shocking finesse, whispering, "Bingo," every time she opened a box, and inspecting my artificial turf samples like they were biohazard material. At one point, she held a plastic flamingo up to her face, sniffed it, and muttered, "Definitely Cuban." The officers reviewed the footage on my phone, their expressions moving from curiosity to disbelief. Breaking and entering, after all, wasn't in the WA job description. They read her rights while she protested that, "This is all for community cohesion. And, you don't understand the codes." She begged them to inspect my shelves for evidence of barn cult activity, but they were more interested in her night vision goggles and camouflage duffel bag. News of her arrest tore through Maple Hollow like a wildfire. That very day, someone leaked the footage onto our private WA Facebook group. Within hours, the video had been viewed hundreds of times. People couldn't get enough of Deborah crawling under a tarp labeled, "Halloween Skeletons, Do Not Open," while mumbling about witchcraft regulations. The WA board called an emergency meeting that night. For the first time ever, the entire clubhouse was packed. People who usually skipped meetings in favor of gardening came out to see the spectacle. Deborah entered wearing a stiff gray blazer and carrying a leather briefcase, looking like a defense attorney in a sitcom. She launched into a slideshow called, "Operation Integrity, Why I Was Right," trying to paint her break-in as a neighborhood vulnerability drill. She showed pictures of my lawn statues, pointing out how they faced west in defiance of WA harmony. When someone laughed and said, "They're just statues," Deborah clapped back, "That's what they want you to think." Laughter drowned her out. Her PowerPoint, featuring red circles and ominous arrows pointing to innocent objects like doormats and tiki torches, did not help her case. The board voted unanimously. Deborah Klein was stripped of her title, barred from holding WA office ever again, and ordered to stop monitoring her neighbors entirely. But her troubles didn't stop there. Apparently, the district attorney's office was tired of petty neighborhood drama clogging up emergency services. They chose to press formal charges: trespassing, unlawful entry, and harassment. 2 months later, her trial began. Her defense team claimed she had acted out of genuine civic concern. The prosecution played the footage of her interrogating a rubber duck with a flashlight. At one point, she was seen analyzing a bag of scented candles and whispering, "Suspiciously fragrant." The judge, barely holding back laughter, declared her guilty. Her sentence: 6 months of house arrest, a $2,000 fine, and 100 hours of community service, specifically, at a nearby livestock rescue center. The judge added, "It seems you have an affinity for barns. Let's make it official." As the ruling was read, Deborah's face transformed from indignation to disbelief to a kind of stunned surrender. She looked over at me seated quietly in the gallery. Her mouth opened, shut, then opened again, like she couldn't decide whether to shout or vanish. Her attorney gently led her out.